Hi, I'm Heather from booktubes, and today is my July reading wrap up. A little bit of a weird month in July. I've been clawing my way out of reading slump. I did post a video talking about it, but in the month of July, I read 23 books. I DNF'd 11 of them, and so I'm going to talk about 12 of them today. Of those 12, 8 were novellas, which I think has never happened before, ever. So interesting. I was obviously trying to read novellas in the hopes of just having myself read something that was pretty achievable and didn't feel like too much of an obstacle. I was trying to lower the barrier of entry. Tell the boys to give you an ice cream. I was trying to get myself to read, and big shout out to Tracy at Bookend to Bookend on Instagram. She and I were trying to help each other read throughout the month. We didn't necessarily reach our goals, but August could be the month because we really got the momentum going in July. So I would not have read nearly as much as I did without Tracy, and so thank you, Tracy. I love her. As always, we're going in chronological order. The first one was Angel's Blood, which is Guild Hunter #1 by Nalini Singh. I gave this first book 4 stars. I've never read this series before, and I did just announce a read-along for this on Steph at Novelty Corner's channel. That's where all the live shows will be, and our first live show will be at the end of August, beginning of September, depending on what hemisphere you're in. But this is a very popular, very well-known urban fantasy romance series. It involves angels, and it's interesting because the vampires are under the angels, and then she works as a guild hunter retrieving vampires, but she's also working for the angels. So it's not like enemies to lovers, opposite sides or anything like that. However, she is pretty wary of this archangel in particular. Obviously, the archangels are the most powerful beings in the entire universe, so understandable to be a little nervous of the ruler of New York for all intents and purposes. I actually enjoyed this more than Side Changeling. It's pretty insta-love, more so than I was expecting, for sure. I know that we dip in and out of their point of view for the books, for the series, for this couple, so I'm curious to see what we end up doing with that as they continue, because they got together in this first book, and he's like this all-powerful immortal being that's like, yeah, this random human is the one for me. And I've decided that in the last 2 days. Why? Because she interests me. So, you know, it was a little convenient for me, but still, I really had a very fun time with it. And I had a very fun time with it in a really bad reading slump, not wanting to read this book and then picking up and really enjoying it. So that is a win for me personally. Then I read Primal Craving by Kenzie Kelly. I gave this 2 stars. I said weird kink club hookup. It's a novella. I don't remember much about it, but he was a werewolf, I think, that, I don't know. It was weird. It wasn't really worth your time. Then I read Welcome to Arcane Academy by Erin Kane. This is like a serial type thing, and I gave this 2 stars. This is Why Choose and University. It was my 100th book of the year, which was lackluster. They bullied me because they didn't know any better, and you're talking about literal grown men who are bullying you because they have a prejudice against people not from magical families. Like, let's be so for real for a minute. Let's check in with reality. Like, okay. Then I DNF'd a Portal Romantasy. Then I DNF'd a Highlander novella. Then I DNF'd a sci-fi romance. Then I read The Locklast Part 1 by Marilyn Stonecross. I gave this 3 stars. This is a historical Highlander novella. She's considered to be a witch and has been exiled, basically. He's the son of an enemy lord. He's in enemy territory. He's captured. She rescues him. They travel together. They're in love. This was also not a standalone. Like, you would need to read part 2 for the fulfillment of the whole story, but I definitely did not care enough for that. Then I read Runaway Bride, which is Bombshell Brides #2 by Cassie Mint. I gave it 4 stars. This is another novella. She runs away from her mafia groom, and he follows her and gives up the mafia life for her. And he only became a mafia boss to be arranged to marry her, which I thought was pretty cute. I have enjoyed Cassie Mint in the past. some more than others. Very over the top, alpha, dramatic, insta love. This is a ridiculous setup. Novellas, sometimes that's exactly what you want, and she writes them well. Then I DNF'd a mafia novella. Then I read Desire in His Blood, which is Brides of the Kylor, #1 by Zoe Draven. Obviously a very popular alien romance. And I gave this 5 stars. It was, in fact, really, really good. I had a lot of skepticism on whether or not this would be for me. I was afraid it would be too angsty, but it was not. So you have winged vampire aliens, and he hates her father for a lot of reasons, but specifically war crimes against his family, some pretty legitimate reasons. And then she is going to marry him to unbury her family from the mountain of debt that her father has gotten them into with his gambling addiction. He definitely does not like her at the beginning and is in denial that she would be his fated mate. But it's high interaction, slow burn, enemies to lovers, and he doesn't do anything completely unforgivable. And the other members of his family and household and species are decently kind to her, even when they are not happy with the family that she's from. Okay, super quick content warning here. Her mother suffered with depression and did die of suicide, historically off page, but her family is still grieving her and she's mentioned quite a bit, so just be aware of that. I DNF'd a couple of non-fictions very quickly, didn't really give them a chance. Then I read Accidentally Kidnapping the Hitman by Cassie Mint, and I gave this 2 stars. This is obviously another novella. She grew up with him, is best friends with his twin brother. This was absolutely wild. She mistakes him for his twin brother, and then they are doing his twin brother's bachelor night. He's been out of touch for years, not in any communication with his family or anything. She fully figures out that it's him, right? And she's always had a crush on him, but he didn't know that, and he's always had a crush on her and been obsessed with her. But he is a hitman, which his family does not technically know. And it was the weirdest thing, literally just the most bizarre, like, what are you talking about? Conflict. She has known this guy her whole life, right? Again, best friends with his twin brother, is in love with him, has been in love with him for years, has saved her virginity for him, okay, specifically. So we're talking, like, this is not just some random guy, right? They are dancing in the nightclub and he pulls her close and she feels a knife at his waistband and freaks the fuck out and is like, oh my God, he's gonna murder me, and runs away. Because he's gonna murder her, and oh my god, what a stupid thing to do. Why would I do this? This is so dangersome. And then is like, all right, I probably overreacted there. Let's chill down. Let me just invite him to my residence, not tell anyone he's coming over. 20 minutes ago, I thought he was gonna kill me because I felt a knife. But now, I'm like, nah. I was in danger in public, but in the privacy of my own home, perfectly safe. And then proceeds to give him her virginity because that is important to her, apparently. Okay. All right. Maybe it's just because, like, I live in the country. Like, it is not uncommon to see people with weapons. It's certainly not uncommon to see people with knives. Like, a lot of guys who have a need to cut things with their jobs or just in their day-to-day life are going to carry a knife. It does not make them murderers. Now, to be fair, he is a murderer, technically. He is a hitman. That is true. And she didn't know that. And she's like, you have to confess. You have to tell me right now. And it's just like, for me though, it was like freaking out about him carrying a knife. None of that computed. None of that made sense. He does quit being a hitman for her because apparently she can't handle it. I don't know. Now, I mean, I don't know. Certainly I would freak out if I found out my husband was murdering people on the side. Like, in real life, that would surprise me. That would be a bit of a culture shock. But in a romance called Accidentally Kidnapping the Hitman, I really need you to not decide that him being a hitman is the conflict. Especially not when actually the conflict is he carries a knife. for some reason, even though I've been in love with him for years, I'm sure he's carrying a knife on him for the express intent of stabbing me. Then I DNF'd an alien romance. Then I read Between Spells and Shadows by Aaron Barbosa. I gave this 2 stars. This is another novella, but this is a ace witch summons a demon, and the demon is a succubus, and so she needs sex, but they're falling in love, and the witch, who is ace, is also specifically sex averse. So the succubus isn't able to get what she needs to feed, and then the witch had specifically summoned the succubus to fake date her so that her nemesis would want to take her girlfriend, because that's how her nemesis is. It's just how she behaves. And if she tries to take her girlfriend, then the succubus could take the nemesis's soul. So far, so good. I'm on board. The witch decides that tonight's the night. The succubus needs to stop starving. They're over. They don't talk about it. The succubus is pretty annoyed that the witch was like, hey, we're done, without even a conversation or allowing her to make decisions for herself. And then the succubus goes back to hell with the nemesis. The witch is like, oh, I'm sad, and summons the demon back, and that's where it ends. We don't see the conversation, we don't see an apology, we just see her once again deciding, oh wait, actually I want to be in a relationship, so we're gonna be in a relationship. And it was weird to me. Like, I didn't like that pacing or conclusion at all whatsoever. Like, I was team succubus. She's right. You didn't respect her or treat her like an equal in this, and that would be difficult for me to get over. And in a romance book, if I need to get over something, I need to see the resolution of that on page, for sure. Then I DNF'd a dystopian romance. Then I DNF'd a mafia romance. Then I read The Teacher by Lee Jaquo. This is another novella. I gave it 3 stars. This is a married couple role-playing as strangers at the art class that she teaches, and that's all it is, and it was fine. Then I read Ardently Abducted by Latrex Nova, perhaps? I gave this 5 stars. This is a Pride and Prejudice retelling tentacled alien novella, and I really liked it. I really liked the humor. I liked the references to Pride and Prejudice. It does specifically reference the 2005 Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice, so if that's not the reference that you want, that is the reference that we are working off of here. I liked the way that they had the aliens recreate Regency balls for trying to court the humans. I thought that was cute. The Wickham-esque alien does attempt to sexually assault both the main character and her friend and is unsuccessful, but that whole scene is playing out as he's attempting to do so on page. So be aware of that. But I surprisingly really loved it. Thank you, Jessica, for the recommendation. And there is like some serious tentacle stuff, so if that's not for you, it's present. It's there. Then I DNF'd a retelling. Then I reread Trials of Conviction, which is Firebird Chronicles number 5 by T.A. White. This is the final book in the Firebird Chronicles that is currently out, so our read along is on pause until the next book is released. I cannot wait. This 5th book ends on such an interesting reveal that I've just been so excited to continue ever since I finished it the first time back in October. And I think it's a really good place to be current on the series on, so I just can't recommend this sci-fi romance enough. It's a lot of sci-fi, a lot of politics, and like such an excellent romance. There's plenty of romance to keep me intrigued as a romance reader, but there's also just so much going on with the side characters and the plot and learning about the world and learning about the different alien species and people's motivations and all of that stuff. It's just done in exactly the way that I like it. I cannot recommend it enough if you want a independent main character who is going to find a found family and a supportive family, the support system that they need, as well as the romantic relationship. And the thing that I really, really, truly love about this series is that at every single point where they could fail, the trust that she is going to have to put in them, which is a lot, and she has a lot of trust issues and has a lot of right to be skeptical of people and whether or not they're going to come through for her. Her new family, her love interest, they're going to pass every single test. Even ones that are like a really serious matter that you could even understand if they chose not to take her side on that, but they're always going to take her side. And I just love that for her so much. I do think with the way that book 1 ends, you might be like, well, that's not what's happening, but it always is what's happening, and I love that for us. Then I DNF'd a dark rom-com, and then finally I read Hold On, which is the Berg number 6 by Kristen Ashley. I gave this 5 stars simply because this was like a 600-page book and I was not finishing it simply because I wanted it to not end. So I felt like that had to be a 5-star. It is Kristen Ashley, classic romantic suspense, and it cannot be read as a standalone. You need to read this whole series, which starts with a axe murdering serial killer, and the effects of that are still ongoing here in book 6, even though he's long been caught. This whole series is pretty angsty. For instance, the first book is a second chance romance where they had their first chance a couple decades ago. And all of these, it's been like couples who weren't able to get together for whatever reason or had like really sad or tragic things happening and are now finally going to end up with some happiness at the end of a really long and difficult journey. And so sometimes that is like too angsty for me, too sad, too emotional, but it walks a good line if you already like Kristen Ashley for sure. And the series is pretty heavy on the romantic suspense elements. It's not Kristen Ashley if somebody doesn't get kidnapped and shot, I can tell you that. That's all of the books that I read. Looking at my reading journal, you can see my diversity stats. Now, all of my diversity stats are based on books I finished. They are not including any books that I DNF'd. So I read 3 books by authors who are BIPOC. That was 25%. That is my goal. How I managed that, I'm really not sure, but I did. And one of those was also a queer book and BIPOC. That's why you have the pen kind of lining them up together. Okay, there's that. For my July goals, I failed romantasy, as you can see when I made my July journal spread. I was still hoping, still thinking that that might be a thing, but it was not. That's everything for July. We're in August now. I am 7 books behind on my reading goal right now, which is 200. So good luck to me. We'll see if I catch up in August. Fingers crossed. I do feel like I have a little bit of a good reading momentum going here. I am hoping that August is like the first month truly out of the reading slump. That's what I'm hoping for. Keep your fingers crossed for me. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.